Welcome back to the channel. And I read this article, so you don't have to. And when I read this, I was like, okay, Bioware needs to leave Mass Effect 2 behind. Understandable. Mass Effect 2 is their highest rated game of all time. It's their best rated game critically of all time. Their best commercial success, Dragon Age Inquisition. Their most successful critically is Mass Effect 2. But then in this article, they go about talking about, Bioware. Since Inquisition, they've had a string of misses. Andromeda, one of them. Anthem, I can't put Anthem on that same level because Anthem was amazing until the content dried up. So I can't really say Anthem was a complete failure when Anthem was amazing until the content dried up. Content drying up in the live service game, that's when the game dies. But all of Anthem was not trash. That shit was amazing. I mean, story was tough. The dungeons were tough. The like overworld was tough. You just go do random missions with your friends. That shit was amazing, bro. I'm not gonna talk down like the quality of the game wasn't peak. I will still go play Anthem over a lot of games to this day. And then they bring up Dragon Age of Veilguard. It just launched. And then they try to make themselves believe, and also the reader believe, that Dragon Age of Veilguard doesn't slot in with the rest of Dragon Age on how it was received. And I'm like, you might have not liked it. A lot of people didn't like it. Commercially, it only sold like what, 3 million in 2 months? That's pretty fucking good in my eyes. But for a lot of people, it was a failure. For EA, they like, okay, it underperformed. Why? Because Inquisition did so fucking well that they expected it to do almost as well as Inquisition. 10 years passed? That's kind of a lot to ask. But we're not going to act like BioWare was just out here selling millions and millions of copies of every Dragon Age game. That is a fucking lie. And when it comes to critically acclaimed, they tried to claim that Dragon Age has been critically acclaimed. It has never been. Dragon Age has never got over like an 85 on Metacritic at all. The lowest rated one is a 70 something. And Veilguard came in at what, a 80, 86? And then it is like slowly dropped to like 83? Like over time? Are you fucking stupid? I don't know why these like the so-called fans try to portray falsehoods of the past. Like we have internet too. Nigga, you're not the only ones out here that has played these games. They talk about that, people see Origins as the pure Dragon Age game, and I'm like, it was the first Dragon Age game. That is all Origins was. It is my favorite Dragon Age game, but it was just the first one. So every other Dragon Age was different. There's no Dragon Age game that you can point to like, that's Dragon Age, because every one of them was different. Every one of them was different. So how the hell do you point? That's like saying that's the Final Fantasy game when every Final Fantasy game is different. There's not just one Final Fantasy. Just like there's not just one Dragon Age. So the fact that people put that in their brain, and this freaking journalist is one of them, put that in their mind that, okay, Dragon Age is only Origins, and every Dragon Age after that, even the most popular and famous one, is not Dragon Age enough. They portray that in this. But the critically acclaimed part, I'm like, you gotta be a fucking idiot if you ever think Dragon Age is critically acclaimed. Mass Effect was critically acclaimed for a long time. Until Andromeda. But Dragon Age, the Veilguard scoring at 80 something is right along with the rest of Dragon Age scoring at 80 something. Nothing is different besides how much it sold, and it probably sold just as much as other Dragon Age games until Inquisition came out. But of course, everybody got selective memory when it comes to video games nowadays. So we just gotta leave it at that. But when it comes to the point of the article, they start getting at that the next Mass Effect game, Mass Effect 4, is in a weird spot because BioWare has had a string of failures, like they said, of games not just popping off for them, and they expect the next game to be more of the same. And they like, Mass Effect has been stuck in the shadow of Mass Effect 2 for a while, and I'm like, I mean, it's the highest rated game, but that's definitely a lie. That's definitely a lie. It hasn't been stuck in the shadow of Mass Effect 2. Because they say like, oh, Mass Effect has been Mass Effect 2 since Mass Effect 2. And I'm like, did you play Mass Effect 3? Because Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 are completely different games. Even though combat is mostly similar. They went more action-based in Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 2 is still a fucking cover shooter. Did you forget that part? Of course they did. Why? Because they haven't played those games in a long time. Guess who has? Me, nigga. And then Inquisition, I mean, Andromeda came out and is nothing like the rest of Mass Effect. Nothing like the rest of Mass Effect. You out in the open for most of it. There's not a cover shooter no more. This nigga Ryder is running up and down the battlefield, doing whatever the fuck he wants. He's jumping, floating, flying, throwing motherfucking javelins at niggas. Like he's doing. This nigga's a fucking powerhouse. He don't have to hide behind cover like Shep did. It's not the same. It is not the same. So Mass Effect 4 being perceived as like it's gonna be another clone of Mass Effect 2 is outrageous, because if you played these games, you know for a fact the story didn't flow the same, the characters didn't interact the same, and the combat didn't bang the same. But for some reason, that's where they were getting it. That's what they were getting at. And then they lead off by saying like, oh, we don't need the next Mass Effect game to be better than Mass Effect 2. We just need it to be good. And I'm like, Andromeda was good. Was it Mass Effect Trilogy good? No. It was still a pretty good fucking game. If you played it at least, but most people didn't fucking play it. And then to say Dragon Age the Veilguard was a failure when it was just as good as the most popular Dragon Age game, at least critically, it says a lot about what you are trying to say in this article. And I'm like, come on now, bro. And then they've only liked 2 more like big games since Mass Effect 2, and it just so happened to be Baldur's Gate 3 and Red Dead Redemption 2. 2 other very critically successful games. And I'm like, what? Like that is all you've found substance in since Mass Effect 2? I don't know how much of a gamer you are, but that's all this article really had to offer us. So make sure to like button, subscribe. When people talk about Mass Effect, I love to read, listen, at least until they start speaking bullshit. I'm like, are you just trying to spin a narrative, or are you actually a fan over here? Because I can definitely see the difference. And you're definitely not one of those things I said. But make sure to like button, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.